Richard D. Wolff is Professor of Economics Emeritus at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. His educational background includes a BA in History from Harvard College, a MA in Economics from Stanford University, a MA in History as well as a PhD in Economics from Yale. He is a co-founder and contributor of Democracy at Work, a non-profit organization that promotes democratic workplaces as a key part of a transition to a better economic system. The New York Times Magazine has named him America's most prominent Marxist economist.
Yeah, I am never one to be very interested in predictions. So the truth of it is, I don't know whether capitalism is at its end. And I don't think anybody else does either. And usually the ending is something we become very clear about years after it happens. So I don't know about the end of capitalism. But I will say that this is the worst condition of global capitalism in my lifetime. And I've been here a long time. And I will tell you a story. Because I went to the elite universities of the United States, I know many of the leading economists in the United States, right-wing, left-wing, and in the middle. And we get together sometimes for coffee or to talk. And we do not agree on how the United States got into this current situation, and we do not agree on what to do about it. But the interesting thing is, we agree on the following sentence. This is the worst condition of capitalism in our lifetimes. And I think that's a very significant comment. Well, what are the conditions that people point to? I think there are three. One is the explosive importance of the end of the Soviet Union, of the changes in the People's Republic of China, and in this following way, that it opened to Western capitalism, the capitalism of Western Europe, North America, and Japan, an immense new working class, an immense new hundreds of millions of people able and willing and eager to work as employees of capitalist companies. In a simple way, it changed the balance between the employer class, concentrated industrial power in Western Europe, North America, and Japan on the one hand, and an increased mass of well-trained, low-paid workers. And all that we have seen, at least in the last half century, has been the working out of this radical, different situation as the capitalists have made an enormous amount of money, basically by figuring out how to take advantage of this enormous new mass of poor but capable workers. Some capitalists did it by bringing in immigrants, low-wage, desperate immigrants to their home countries. Other capitalists did it in the reverse way, moved their production out of the old centers of capitalism into China, India, Brazil, etc. And this is a major change. And the reason it plunges capitalism into a structural crisis is that while it makes a very small number of people very, very wealthy, because basically they're substituting low-wage workers for higher-wage workers, it also presents itself as a fundamental crisis for the mass of the working class in Western Europe, North America, and Japan, because they are being told, you are going down to the level that the third world was, because we're moving production into the hands of these third world workers. This has not been planned. This has not been explained to the mass of workers. So they are constantly confronted by a deterioration of the social welfare system, social democracy in Europe, of the old New Deal arrangements in the United States that came out of the 1930s. And so you have a working class very much more agitated, very anxious, very worried. And I think you see that in the movement to the right politically in Germany, the support for Le Pen in France, the anger of the French working class against the Socialist Party because it hasn't helped them, the vote for Mr. Trump here in the United States, the vote for Bernie Sanders. For the first time in 50 years, an American politician can take the name socialist and millions of people vote for him. All of these are signs of the failure of this system to manage the transition to extraordinary wealth for the top 5%. The second cultural structural problem is no way to handle the political impact. In other words, if you make a tiny group of people, relatively speaking, 5% or whatever the number is, very, very wealthy, and you plunge the mass of people into a declining, frightening situation, you are going to have political explosion. You have to manage that, or else it will defeat you. This is the same problem as going back into the 19th century when you make the transition from agrarian feudalism into industrial capitalism. You're going to destroy many institutions. You're going to create all kinds of upheaval. And capitalism was almost overthrown, whether you look at the revolutions of 1848 or of 1870 or the Paris Commune or the revolutions after World War I. This was a mass of workers disturbed by what was going on who almost got rid of capitalism. You're now facing the other side of that problem. The rich, knowing that the mass of people are angry, have decided to manage the situation by buying the political system, by literally taking it away from any democratic foundation because it's too dangerous for them. But what that does is it makes the mass of people not only have economic problems getting worse, but cannot look to the political system for any kind of solution here. So they try wild things. They vote Brexit, or they vote Trump, or they vote Beppe Grillo, or whatever it is that is maybe something, even if it's strange and odd, that maybe gets them out of a dead end. Last thing, in the places to which capitalism moved, that's China, India, Brazil, there you have again the problems of 19th century European capitalism. It's a new capitalism. It's transforming this society. It is moving hundreds of millions of people off of the land into the cities and industry, and it is driving these people crazy, and they have their own tensions, and it's not clear that the people running those societies can manage it. So whether you are in the areas to which capitalism is gone and is growing, or whether you're in the areas that capitalism is abandoning, you have a level of tension between the controllers and the controlled that makes it impossible to know whether this is going to be a phase or whether it might be a system that can't handle the contradictions it has itself brought into being. Well, a few minutes ago I said I wouldn't predict, and now I'm going to make a little prediction. I have not been a person who thinks capitalism is collapsing. I haven't been part of that kind of, because I don't believe in this sort of prediction business. But I will tell you that I don't see a way out. I don't see a return to capitalism concentrated in its old centers. I believe Mr. Trump, who has a desire to do that here in the United States, will not succeed in this process. He has too many enemies, which include the business community, which is not going to let him do that, I would guess. Or to put it another way, if he succeeds, the destabilization of Europe and Japan will be staggering. And it will, if he succeeds, it will be at the expense of the rest of the world. And in that way, it has parallels with German history in the 1930s and 40s also. You cannot solve these problems inside. It has effects everywhere else, and it mobilizes the whole world against you. And that's the same risk that the United States faces, and it hasn't learned anything from German history at all. Doesn't even know what that history is. So I am closer to believing than ever in my life that the system has now produced a network of problems that it cannot solve, or at least that I don't see solutions emerging that can begin to manage this level of difficulty. If, again, to use our example in America, if Trump proceeds to, for example, threaten the export economies of India, China, and Brazil, we will be in a situation which in the past in human history has gone from a trade war to a military war, and then all calculations make no difference anyway. So in that sense, I guess I am pessimistic. On the other hand, I do think there is emerging a new direction for those of us who think that the solution is not this or that law or regulation or international agreement, but that we are at a point of systemic crisis, and that therefore the only rational solution is to think about what alternative system could be established that would have a different set of problems that are more manageable than the problems of capitalism, which I don't think are manageable. And here, the left, of which I'm a part, has to be able to be not only critical of capitalism and its dead end, but also of the socialist history out of which we come. And here, I would say as simply as I can, the socialism that comes out of the 19th century and that dominated in the 20th century was in its way very successful, but insufficiently profound. That is, it was a socialism that said the problem with capitalism is private ownership of the means of production and markets, so that what we will have is a new system with public ownership of the means of production and government planning. Public ownership and planning versus private ownership and markets. What that ignored was the organization of the workplace, where each of us goes 5 or 6 days of the week from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. That's where we spend most of our adult lives, at work. If you do not transform the workplace, your efforts to transform the rest of society won't work, because they will be held back, they will be undone by the unchanged nature of the workplace. And to be simple about it, I don't think in the Soviet Union, and I don't think in the People's Republic of China, you made the transformation. What would that transformation be? Well, before I tell you, the answer, which I will give you in a minute, is the new direction, is the new system, which I think is where we're going and which can, perhaps, solve our problem. The answer is you have to revolutionize the workplace because it wasn't done before. Whatever you think about government ownership or state enterprises or planning has to be rethought in terms of what it would look like if it were built on the basis of a radically transformed work organization. So here's what it would look like. And here in the United States, we use the term, because it's more comfortable in people's minds, of worker co-op. And what it simply means is every workplace changes. The decisions of the workplace are now to be made democratically. One worker, one vote. And in each enterprise, in a factory, in a store, in an office, the workers collectively decide what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, and what to do with the profits. This is the democratization of the workplace. It is a radical change in how all workplaces will be organized. It gives every worker the role not only of employee, but also of employer. It destroys the foundation of capitalism, which divides people into a small number of employers and a huge number of employees. It is the end of capitalism in the same way that liberating the slave was the end of the slave economy, of liberating the serf was the end of the feudal economy, liberating the employee, in this case, by transforming him or her into an employer at the same time, is the end of capitalism and will produce another system. And I think if we bring that to the mass of people suffering in a capitalism, they will see this as a revolution that is about them. It's not about giving some distant government all kinds of authority. It's about transforming their own lives and making the government dependent for the first time on a system of democratic control at the base so that they can have some hope of making it work in their interests rather than the interest of the employer. So for me, I would summarize by saying socialism in the 21st century will be more focused at the micro level of the enterprise than at the macro level of ownership and planning, and that's a necessary rebalancing of the micro and the macro, and therefore corrects what was the limitation of socialism in the 19th and 20th century.